Where is the solution behind all this confusion? For far too long, we have been looking, yet fooling ourselves in such a process towards finding an utopia. An utopia, one that we wish would force us beyond our comprehension to somehow promise us undivided equality. Undivided equality and harmony in all of interpretations. An utopia free of maladherence, free of disobedience, free of abhorrence, and free of suffering. As dismissive as this may seem, this is, in actuality, a morality left in wishful vein. So, the very first question amidst all these images shown in front of you is, what is it about this video that may or may not relate to me? Well, amidst today's pressing topics and concerns, be it climate change, metabolic syndromes, obesity crisis, drugs or opioid crisis, addiction crisis, gender crisis, inequality crisis, or whatever crisis you can think of, there appears to be always two binary sides of opinions telling you, coercing you, and of all, urges you thus to take binary affirmations and or confirmation bias towards some sort of this hopeful returning of this notion of balance. In times of struggles and or increasing uncertainties, we often hear in our head that the more helpless we are, the more we yearn this anxiety within us that is to get someone else to do it. Just make it happen no matter what the cost. All in the path or faith of least resistance, yet also in the path or of faith of most compliance, simultaneously also within the path or faith of no exceptions. This video dissertation implores us all that is likely nothing more than an idealistic moral yet helpless virtue signaling in vain. Hence, the very reason why you're watching this video, it's for hoping beyond just yet another approach of nihilism, but of solitary conviction, that is an assertion for you to keep challenging what is you for you. Given this dissertation's immensely deep array of topics and concerns, please ensure that you watch this multiple times to both acquaint and gain clarity amidst its overlapping themes throughout sociology, philosophy, economics, and on top of it all, how we can address this all from the perspective of progressive and decentralized nutritional science. All of this commences with our initial examining on why it is imperative for us to reconsider challenging our notions and sentiment of what really constitutes utopia. Let us briefly reconcile on everything we've tried so far: communism, socialism, fascism, dictatorships. Are we there yet? Have we transcended ourselves towards such a utopia irrespective of individual differences and irrespective of individual variabilities? Well, sadly, apparently not. Somehow, we still want more changes to happen. We still want more of this change to somehow be more united, be more harmonized for the better, the greener, faster, cheaper, more instant, more convenient, more charitable, more subservient, more laws, more punishments, more regulations, more subservience. It all seems as though that as we revolutionize ourselves towards one road or another road and another road from there on towards this so-called freedom, do we ever fail and forgetting at times that as we live through from one transition to another, all are just collectivist and centralized attempts nevertheless at overriding human variabilities themselves. Despite dozens, if not millions of lives have been lost or claimed in such a process, something is still not registering as enough. challenge is a very uncomfortable word when you think about it. Because such an utopia is likely an emotionally invested, an emotionally entrenched vision that it should not ever be challenged at all. Whenever we are pushed to our limits beyond that of our decreasing capacity of autonomous contingencies, we often increasingly become judged by that of the outside moral virtue signaling stigma to succumb, to resort, and to submit towards these three feel-good words and or simply outcomes: paternalism, common sense, then everything in moderation. All these three things share something in common. They expect harmony, they expect conformity, and of all things, they expect linearity. If everything works in moderation, yet not in one context or not in one aspect or not in this or that manner, be it disarrangement, then the question that remains is, moderated by whom? Meta-analysis? Statistics? Averages upon averages? By whose common sense? Is it communalized common sense? Is it religion? Collectivity over individuality? So as you can see, Utopia seems so emotionally entrenched in that its alluring vision, which we all correlate and wish for, all very convincingly fixates on the above visions of linearity, which sadly brings to this one likely realization, whether we like it or not, is that such an utopia is likely one that requires much more violence, that one that requires much more coercion for any peace, for any so-called peace or freedom were to occur. Think about it. Before any so-called freedom were to manifest as a societal condition, there must be an external overriding force required, so much so that such a force must impose collectivist obligation, that such a force must impose linear assumptions of every living being, that it remains expected to possess infinite notions of charity to keep this system going. Therefore, as one wishes more freedom, one must also be willingly become imprisoned, as structurally imposed by greater collectivism. If, for instance, one drug is prescribed at fixating or correcting, say, only one condition, then another drug will most likely be required at quelling a side effect that the previous drug causes, and then another drug required then to quell this another impending side effect, and the next, and the next, and so on, and so on, and so forth. Hence, in many things, modern medicine these days is most likely treated as a confused, bewildered religion. There is a repeat of cavalry, a repeating of legion. This is not a delusion. All this is simply an impending outcome that is likely to manifest should we were to remain fixated at crusading and imposing this chain and this pattern of paternalism towards such an utopia that we all wished for. Well, let's consider this next word. It's called science. The word science is often fantasized as collective consensus, collective agreements, in absence of disagreements, in absence of oppositions. Just as climate prediction models and or scientific animals experiment models are still somewhat questionable in terms of their degrees of accuracy and relevance to say human epidemiological implications. Whenever we scrutinize or uncouple any such inflammatory protein or any suspecting factor down to its smaller and smaller and more specific constituent, away from its own, from other ecosystems of its interactions, well, such an answer is going to be very subjectively complex to the point of certain impossibility. Science, therefore, is, in its troubling definition today, as advised and perpetuated by whoever powers that be, remains to be expected as a proposed singularity without subjectivity. Now, is that really what we are hoping for? Why is this? Because science never respects anecdote as evidence. Science treats each and every anecdote as nothing more than a free radical. After all, what is correctness really means? Correctness is quantified. Okay, this initiative is neither for nor against, for instance, climate change, in that it believes that carbon dioxide is empirically evil for life, or that carbohydrate reductions and restrictions are likely needed for life, or following this philosophy is indeed to be the best thing there is for life. Likewise to this convention, or this invention, or this drug, or this methodology for life. It argues that it is far more important to localize from what seems to be a complex picture into a series of smaller and smaller contemplations that are far more relevant, hence localized to one's own contextual needs. Thus, an embracing, not a crusading, of scientific anecdotes. An embracing, not a crusading, of n equals 1. And that precisely is central to everything behind this concept initiative strives to implore at highlighting and addressing for further contemplations. But whatever response and course of actions lies independently to that of the reader's own biological convictions at interpreting and partitioning what enough means. Through self-inquiry, as questioning, scrutinizing, and mediating all obligatory ecosystems, both liabilities and abilities, amidst reconciling authentically two episodes of economics, one of authentic scarcity and two of authentic abundance, both planned within your own pragmatic, resilient means of challenge through hunger and feasting. People often complain about having lacked any sense of directions in their life. So, well, there is nothing vague at all about hunger or famine, because this clearly represents an opportunity for you to testify yourself at resensitizing what enough means. Being hungry is something that lies beneath every sentient being. That is, the ultimate reason to life is survival. Survival of sufficiency amidst episodes of scarcity. If nutrition is the very encapsulation of reason, then why not take this opportunity then for your own existing body to reason with its own self? Yes, that is correct. This concept-breaking initiative presents what arguably is the most far-fetched, the most debated, the most subjective, the most chaotic and epidemiologically criticized hypothesis against our own turbulences. Whatever sentiments and or pejoratives you may throw at it, binge, purging, off the rails, on the rails, I'm on the diet, I'm off the diet. Is this the perfect solution for all then? Well, maybe it is, maybe not. It is very easy to prescribe 1,000 solutions, and yet it is extremely difficult to find a single remedy. Think about it. If thousands of prescriptions exist, then that is more than reasonable enough to say that only one remedy is certain. That is, quote unquote. Go find and work it out amongst your own selves. Details still matter, context still matter, and contingencies still matter. Meticulous research, individual research, as well as specific supplementations, which all definitely matters. What matters at the end of it all is taking ownership and transcending of your own individual authenticity and slowly reconciling what enough means. And to do this is to willingly challenge your existing notion of comfort. Let's think about this. What enough means is arguably remains individually anarchic. By you having thus experienced two contrasting episodes of economics, nobody, and by that I shall repeat, nobody but you yourself alone, will likely have thus manifested your own self-confidence at authentically defining what enough means. Obviously, all this is not meant to be patronizing, similar as any blanket motivational statement. After all, it remains to be respected that each and everyone's context, struggles, and problems are indeed individual. You may have an illness, you may have lost a job. After all, income governs outcome. So what if, then, that you have tried everything, and yet very little convinces you of anything? The very best that this concept initiative and its parent manuscript may ever provide you as possible contemplation is the following three things. First and foremost, revise. Revise yourself, space and time, towards scientific privacy as room for more opportunities, for more space at self-inquiring. Explore all your available options by investing yourself some additional, much-needed research. We may now proceed to reflect. Examine your existing collected means of intuitive data. There must be something at whether you've overlooked or underlooked somewhere amidst your self-inquiring. The third and final realm. 3. Repeat. Actions must somehow inevitably manifest into rituals. But of course, one small change must be somehow incorporated as something different. How do you know where your limits are? Well, try a little lower than what you currently or intuitively expect at this moment. One change, one question, one scrutiny at a time. And over time, once you've overcome those, just each one of those limits itself, try raising to another change, another question, and another scrutiny. Hence, revise, reflect, and repeat. Understandably, all this seems overwhelming. So here are some contemplative takeaways. Peace is contextual sufficiency. Violence is contextual insufficiency. For anything that has conflicting consensus, ideology, opinion, meta-analysis conclusion, from any figure or of seemingly superior correctness, try to find something that you contextually agree, as well as try to find or highlight something that you contextually disagree. So, if you happen to agree to something, so be it. And if you happen to disagree with something, then so be it. For as long as you can filter and partition what is relevant towards your own contextual needs, then there is no need for violence. Hence, try to keep everything within your own selves. Try not to raise any moral or correctness pitchforks. For instance, labeling yourselves as thought police and or social justice warriors. So, once again, we shall break this down into something more practical. If you believe that climate change is quote-unquote real and or factual, then go make changes that are both feasibly and realistic to you and only you. Recycle as much as possible, but try not to raise correctness or moral pitchforks in simply believing that carbon dioxide and nothing else is empirically harmful. The greenhouse you bought relies on carbon dioxide itself to help things, well, grow. If you believe vegetarianism is good, then keep your own convictions to your own private and once again peaceful self-authenticity. This rightfully may also be reserved to any other diets or nutritional protocols. That is, provided once you have owned up every metabolic or physiological repercussions resulting from pertaining from such nutritional reductionism. But again, try not to raise moral condemnations against cholesterol, cytokine interleukin 6, homocysteine, methyl glyoxal, reverse T3, on and on it goes. There comes a point whereby such a journey of scientific microcosmic scrutiny may show its own limits in the long run. We may have to be careful on where we draw or thread such a fine line between nihilistic insanity or contextual pragmatism. So, what should we do then amidst this period of so-called hunger? Well, it remains open to your own contemplative imagination and of productivity. How about exercising your self-critical thinking to be your own scientific reasoning between frictions? How about, along the way amidst this self-inquiry, why not challenge your own existing abilities ecosystems by that of maintaining, if not reinforcing, your means of exercise? That is, fitness training meritocracies. Sooner or later, you are drawn towards your own ownership of envy. And that is not moral perversion. That is simply a reconciling of primal admissions, of both volume and or symmetry. Moral perversion is just simply that, a morality. Hormones, precursors, reality. Within your own skin, grit, blood, and bones of authenticity. Now imagine arriving and building and developing towards this state of primal admission. There is no other greater reward made by your own hands and feet. So, it makes not an iota of sense should we were to combat one over another towards this very subjectively driven utopia. If the very definition of utopia is that of nowhere or of no place, then some form of chaos, some form of dystopia is still likely remains to be somewhat required as some sort of logistics somewhere, so that it transcends such uncertainty from unclarified nowhere into gradually a more composed and more clarified somewhere. All that matters is arguably all about finding our own selves, finding clarity amidst our own selves, as far away from they selves, the collectivist tug-of-war pedestrian normalcy. You are not someone else's data. You are your own data, your own intuitive data. Statistics should not own you, neither that of your consciousness. You are your own potential reason of authentic being. So be it. A solution may yet be a dissolution, a state of willingly self-disassociation away from submissive confusions. Hence, science should be, after all about respecting individuals, making and forming individual discoveries. This video dissertation is an extended discussion based from one of my own feature blog articles on the mouse Utopia, aka Universe 25 population study, as conducted in the 1960s by John Calhoun. If you wish to read more on this, including that of my own dissertations and specific thoughts surrounding such experiments, relativity, correlations, and their significance to our sociological state of times, visit the direct URL as provided in the description below. And as kind reminder once again, my free-to-view manuscript, Nutritional Humility, remains free for viewing and reviewing and sharing for 5 years in the making, since 31st of December 2015, all the way to the date of this video dissertation upload. Also, as a kind reminder that my other accompanying book and manuscript, Dietary Advanced Glycation End Products, also remains available for such likewise reviewing, viewing, and sharing. This author would like to thank you for your viewership. Any comments, sincere thoughts, and feedbacks are going to be appreciated should any of these contextual discussions relate to your contextual needs and concerns in return. Thank you.